Welcome to Devotions Before Dawn, where we study one chapter of the Bible every day until we've studied all 1,189 chapters of the Bible. So make sure you're subscribed, and after this video, check the playlists and get all caught up so we can study the entire Word of God together. How to battle fatigue and fear, and people talking trash and criticizing your efforts and your building. Nehemiah is a book about a man who returned to Jerusalem to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, because while the people had gone and rebuilt the temple and reinstituted worship, the walls were down, the gates were burned with fire, and the people were vulnerable. When he heard that, he got permission from the king of Persia to leave with everything he needed to rebuild these walls, and now the people are building. It's a wonderful picture of building spiritual strength. That temple being rebuilt is a picture of our faith, and the walls going up is a picture of our strength to protect that faith so that worship can thrive. It happened historically, but it also has prophetic meaning in our lives today. But it's not always smooth sailing, is it? In chapter 3, he got the people united. He got them next to one another, building on every area of the wall. Things are going well, but right when things are going well, the critics are going to come out. Fear and fatigue is going to kick in. How do we combat that? How do we overcome that so that we can continue to grow in strength? Let's look at Nehemiah chapter 4, starting in verse 1. When Sandy heard that we were rebuilding the wall, he became very angry. He was greatly incensed. He ridiculed the Jews, and in the presence of his associates and the army of Samaria, he said, "What are those feeble Jews doing? Will they restore their wall? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they finish in a day? Can they bring stones back to life from those heaps of rubble, burned as they are?" Remember those words, heaps of rubble. Verse 3. Toby, the Ammonite, who was at his side, said, "What are they building? Even a fox climbing up on it would break down their walls of stones." So while they're building and they're gaining momentum and the people are working side by side, their enemies are coming out of the woodwork and criticizing them, saying, "You got all these heaps of rubble. The fire has burned these bricks and stones. They're worthless. Even if a fox climbs up on it, the wall is going to fall." How is Nehemiah going to respond to these critics? How is he going to respond to these semi-veiled threats against him and his people? Well, verse 4, before he fires back in any way, he prays. And that's how we should respond as well. When we're building strength, we're building something in our lives, we're uniting people, and then the critics come out. Do we fire back? Well, the first thing we should do is what Nehemiah did. He took it to the Lord in prayer. And this is a pattern in his life and in this book, is that he takes everything to the Lord in prayer. Verse 4, "Hear us, O God, for we are despised. Turn their insults back on their own heads. Give them over to plunder in a land of captivity. Do not cover up their guilt or blot out their sins from your sight, for they have thrown insults in the face of the builders." So we rebuilt the wall until it reached half of its height, for the people worked with all of their heart. They've gotten the wall halfway done. They're doing amazing. And here we see this first round of threats against them and criticisms against them and their work. Nehemiah didn't even respond directly to them in this instance. He just brought it to the Lord, and the people kept building. Verse 7, "But when Sandy, Toby, and the Arabs and the Ammonites and the people of Ashdod heard that the repairs to Jerusalem's walls had gone ahead and that the gaps were being closed, they were very angry. They all plotted together to come and fight against Jerusalem and stir up trouble against it." Wow. They see that it's actually working. The walls are actually getting built, and they get afraid, they get angry, and they want to come fight the people of Israel. How is Nehemiah going to respond? Can you guess? Verse 9. "But we prayed to our God, and we posted a guard day and night to meet this threat." Nehemiah prayed and then took very practical action. We posted a guard to meet this threat. At our church, for our security team, this is one of our verses. It's a spiritual response first, but a common sense response next. We prayed and we posted a guard. Verse 10, "Meanwhile, the people in Judah said, The strength of the laborers is giving out. There is so much rubble, we cannot rebuild the wall. There's the word fatigue. They are wearing out. They've been building and building side by side. They've gotten halfway through the work, give or take. Now they're getting criticized, they're getting threats against them, and they're feeling the fatigue. And you can be doing a great work. You can be doing the work of God. You can be building strength in your life. You can be living a life of worship, doing the right things, but fatigue is a real aspect of our lives. How are we going to respond when we are tired? Well, we see this word rubble again. Remember, I highlighted that earlier. There is so much rubble. Where did they get that word? Where did they get that idea? It is no accident that their enemies said, "You have all those heaps of rubble." And now they're saying, "We cannot rebuild. There's all of this rubble." Listening to the voice of the enemy contributes to fatigue. When you're listening to the voice of the world, when you're listening to the voice of the critics, rather than listening to the Word of God, rather than focusing on the excitement of what it is you're building, it will contribute to being worn out. They said, "There's so much rubble." Just a few verses earlier, their enemy said, "There's so much rubble." Stop listening to the outside world. Stop listening to those ungodly voices in your life. Stop doom scrolling on your phone. Stop all of that stuff that just stirs up fear. It stirs up anger. It contributes to division, and it wears you out. Stop. Just stop. Listen to the Word of God. Listen to the voices who are speaking the Word of God to you. Keep on building that wall, because that will be invigorating. But when we're listening to the enemy, we're focused on the rubble, and it causes us to wear out. Verse 11. Also, our enemies said, "Before they know it, or before they see us, we will be right there among them, and we will kill them and put an end to the work." Wow. They're afraid. That's something to be afraid of. They won't even see us coming, and we're going to kill them. Verse 12. Then the Jews who lived near them came and told us 10 times over, "Wherever you turn, they're going to attack us." So fear is really sinking in. Verse 13. What is Nehemiah's response? "Therefore I stationed some of the people behind the lowest points of the wall, at the exposed places." So he looks at the lowest common denominator. He looks at the weakest spot, the place that might be most likely to be attacked. And in your life, it's good every now and then to look and take a survey of your walls. Where are your weak points? Where are the spots where you need reinforcements? And reinforce those areas. Pick up those weak points and make yourself stronger. The next thing he did, posting them by families with their swords, spears, and bows. He knows they're going to fight harder and they're going to stand strong if they're fighting for their families. And I want to say this, fight for your families, not with them. Don't fight against them, fight on their behalf. And he posts them with their families so that they can fight for their family. What is one of the proper responses to fatigue and fear? Unite with family. He says with their sword, with their spears, with their bows, they're going to work together. They're going to stand together. They're going to fight together. And that is going to push out the fear and the fatigue. Verse 14. After I looked over these things, I stood up and I said to the nobles and the officials and the rest of the people, "Do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome, and fight for your families, for your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes." I believe this is one of the most inspirational verses of the entire Old Testament. Don't be afraid because of them. They're threatening us. They're saying they're going to come in and kill us and that we won't even see them coming. Rather than living in fear, remember the Lord, who is great and awesome, and fight for your families, your sons, your daughters, your wives, your home. How do you combat fatigue and fear? It's uniting with family and stirring up your faith. Remember the Lord. Look back to the Lord. Start connecting with the Lord again. I'm tired. I'm worn out. I am stressed. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if this money doesn't come through? What if I don't get that job? What if? Well, that's what they were living in. You're going to turn here and we're going to be there. You won't even see us. We're going to attack. They're tired and they're afraid. What did they do? They stood with family. Surround yourself with family. And what I like to say, and if you've been listening to this, you might have already heard me say it, at the cross, those who were not family became family and become family. Right? When Jesus was on the cross, he looked at John and he looked at his mother and he said, "Mother, behold your son. Son, behold your mother." In other words, John, you're going to be the son to my mother now, and mother, John is going to be your son, and he's going to watch out for you because I'm not going to be there physically. They were not family, but they became family at the cross. And maybe you have a wonderful family that you can unite with, but maybe you don't. Maybe you feel isolated and alone. I would encourage you to get involved in the family of faith, because at the cross, those who were not family become family. So unite with family, stand together with family, and stir up that faith. How do we fight fatigue and fear? It's with family and it's with faith. Remember the Lord, great and awesome. Verse 15, I love this verse. When our enemies heard that we were aware of their plot and that God had frustrated it, we all returned to the work on the wall, each to his own work. All that fear, all that hype, it came to nothing. And more times than not, 9 times out of 10, what we're facing, the work of the enemy, we never even have to fight it. It comes to nothing. If we stand on faith, if we stand on our principles, if we hold true to our values, if we're united in family and we're standing in faith, many times the work the enemy wants to do is frustrated and falls apart before it ever reaches our walls. Verse 16. From that day on, half of my men did the work, while the other half were equipped with spears, shields, bows, and armor. The officers posted themselves behind all the people of Judah who were building the wall. Those who carried materials did the work with one hand and held a weapon in the other hand. And each of the builders wore his sword at his side as he worked. But the man who sounded the trumpet stayed with me. So they're not naive to their surroundings. They're trusting the Lord. They're staying focused on building what God has called them to build. They're not going out looking for retribution. They're not looking for trouble, but they're ready. I love it. Verse 19. Then I said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, the work is extensive and spread out, and we are widely separated from each other along the wall. Wherever you hear the sound of the trumpet, join us there. Our God will fight for us. So there's a trumpet to rally the people together if there's ever something big going on. And even when they have to fight, when they're planning to fight, they still say, God will fight for us. But up to this point, no one's lifted a spear. No one's shot an arrow. It's all just talk. And Nehemiah keeps the people focused on building. And that's what we need to do. There's a lot of talk. There's a lot of rumor. There's a lot of threats. There's a lot of fear. There's some fatigue in there. What we need to do is unite with family, stir up our faith, and stay focused on what God has called us to do, what God has called us to build. Verse 21. So we continued the work with half the men holding spears from the first light of dawn till the stars came out. At that time, I also said to the people, have every man and his helper stay inside Jerusalem at night, so that they can serve as guards by night and workers by day. Neither I, nor my brothers, nor my men, nor my guards with me took off our clothes. Each had his weapon, even when he went out for water. In other words, they never put their pajamas on. They stayed in their clothes for work and for war. They slept in them. They lived in them. They worked in them. They built in them. It's pointing to the fact that they didn't let their guard down. They stayed ready. I love Nehemiah chapter 4. How do we combat fatigue and fear? First of all, you have to push out those voices of the world. Those voices that say it's a pile of rubble, you'll never get through it. Oh, that mess in your marriage, that's a pile of rubble, you'll never get through it. Those financial issues you're dealing with, pile of rubble, you'll never get it done. It'll never work. You'll never be able to build this thing. And even if you start building this thing, it's going to fall apart. They started listening to those voices, and you saw it in their words. Oh, there's so much rubble. We cannot rebuild the wall. And they're sneaking up on us. They're going to kill us when we're not even looking. Nehemiah said, look, we're going to trust God. We'll post a guard. But stand together with your families. Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome, family and faith, and stay focused on what God has called you to do. That's how we overcome fatigue. That's how we overcome fear. Block out those voices of the world that are nagging and tearing us down, and replace it with the words of faith. Replace it with the family of faith. And keep focused on what God has placed you here to do. And He is going to see the work through. Through all of that, Not a single arrow shot, not a single spear thrown, and they're continuing to build that wall. Let's continue to build that spiritual strength. Nehemiah chapter 4. Thank you for studying the book of Nehemiah with me today. I'm excited to build new strength in this new year. In the comments below, let me know what part of today's devotional impacted you the most. Make sure you press that thumbs up button, and we'll do this all again tomorrow.